Hello, and welcome to an exquisite walkthrough of a brief introduction to F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Slow transition to the next slide. 1. General background. So basically, there's this guy in the 1920s. His name is F. Scott Fitzgerald, and he's become incredibly popular as an author. He's become like a Twilight, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, any of the fads that you youth love. All of those fad authors rolled into this one guy. And then he comes out with this book, pretty short little book called The Great Gatsby, and nobody cares. It's like J.K. Rowling rolling out whatever Harry Potter sequel, and nobody cares. And you can see from the rest of the slide, the critics really hated it. They called it a dud. They called it beautiful but trivial. They called it a piece of mere naughtiness. Slow transition, next slide. But meanwhile, as it got little fanfare and the critics kind of hated on it, many other authors immediately picked up on the fact that The Great Gatsby, there's something kind of cool about it. And now, in the modern day, more copies are sold each year than in his entire lifetime. So there are many reasons why it gained notoriety later in time, but the biggest one is that it paints this really fascinating picture of a snapshot of American society, and it's critical of it. And many people initially were kind of like abhorrent of this idea. So, there are many things that The Great Gatsby is known for. Probably you've heard the name of the novel somewhere in your life already, which is an indicator of how much it has affected America over the 100 years that it's existed. So, there are many defining things. It's called the definitive novel of the Jazz Age. It's also a Keatsian tragedy of ambition and loss. So, it's this grand love story of ambition and trying so much to achieve the American dream and then failing and the loss of it all. And it's also often called the near perfect great American novel. Also, fun fact, it shows up a lot in AP literature tests. So, I really enjoy teaching this novel, but it's also very complicated. So, there's symbolism up the wazoo, as the youth say. It's challenging and complicated, and the language is very beautiful, but very challenging structurally. So, getting through this book, as you read, you're like, what did I just read? And you're very like confused by it, but then you read it again and again, and then you see all these beautiful little details sticking out that just makes the beautiful writing really cool. And you can see already, I mentioned symbolism on this slide. I really like the eyes of TJ Eckelberg. In the movie, they do a great job. Also, colors are really important. You'll see. It's so many layers of symbolism and beauty to this book. Slow transition. So, when you think of The Great Gatsby, you can just think of it as the book that defines the vibe of the 1920s. The 1920s were 100 years ago. You're here in the 2020s. So far, they kind of blow. The 1920s, though, they were pretty sweet. This is back when there's like hope for America. There's like America's building stuff. It's going to be a great place. This is all, of course, before the stock market crash. But basically, the 20s were like a party decade. They were called the Roaring 20s. And this book is really interesting because it shows you, almost like a time capsule, what the 1920s were like. You can see the clothing, the speech, the music, the attitudes, the behaviors, all of the like patterns that defined the other word for the 1920s, which is the Jazz Age. So, number 3, why? What makes The Great Gatsby a timeless classic? I've already told you all these little previews about why I think it's cool, but what like officially makes this a timeless classic? Here's your first reason. 1, it's a mystery. So who is this mysterious Mr. Gatsby? How exactly did Mr. Gatsby get all of that money? Is he good or bad or both? And I figured I would add a clip art detective because I thought he was kind of amusing. So, 2, its characters are captivating. The rich, handsome, mysterious, suave, and debonair Jay Gatsby is our main character. My favorite Gatsby is Leo. When we watch the movie, you'll see him being all fly and rich and smooth, but here are some other Gatsbys over time. Here's another main character, the beautiful, charming, and shallow Daisy Buchanan. On the surface, she's just this beautiful, rich blonde lady. This is her in